It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. It's the SDG Podcast. Welcome, podcasters. Say hello and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Elsta Hura.
Hello, I'm Chad Chetner.
Hi, I'm Peter Lawrence.
And I'm Kyle Bacher. Yeah.
Chad,
Today we're going to talk about,
who am I again?
We're going to talk about being or feeling unappreciated or unrecognized.
Undervalued.
Undervalued.
Yes.
And try to be as positive and bubbly and upbeat as possible while we're complaining.
No. We're not going to complain. We're just going to talk about it. And
It's something that we've all either experienced or seen or both.
I cannot imagine going through life without feeling undervalued at least once in my lifetime. There's no way.
It's a benefit if you feel undervalued and get through it at a young age so that you don't undervalue other people. When you experience it, then you realize what it does. Like
I only wish it worked that well.
Well, I know. I've been on the other end of that.
Chad, you're biting your tongue.
Yeah.
Because I've never experienced this, so I'm fascinated to hear what you guys. I'm fascinated to hear the emotional journey you guys are going to take me on right now.
Chad has spent his career standing on a pedestal that was built by those around him, and they lifted him up.
I'm curious though, because when this topic got suggested, Chad, you seem to be super excited about it and all over it. So what was it about this that triggered something in your brain?
Yeah, it's just literally unfamiliar territory. So I am about to be delighted by all of this. I do feel like I might be on the other end of this, where not necessarily going through. I mean, it's been probably a very, very, very long time that I've went through some semblance of this, but I feel like on the other side of it, there are probably people that I do undervalue currently. So this is why I'm excited to hear about what they're probably going through right now.
First of all, I forgive you.
We all say that like it's a bad thing. Like, you know what? Like, yeah, I would imagine that it probably feels horrible to feel undervalued. I would also like to explain to folks specifically what goes into, like, all right, here's what that feels like for a person, right? And then here's the other side of it, right? Like, nobody's intentionally doing this. I'm not intentional, not really intentionally doing it, but there are factors that lead into, giving one person work versus another person's work, or taking the output of somebody's day and saying, okay, this is great, maybe not the most useful, like this doesn't apply to us, so we're going to shelve it for now, right? And I would imagine that's the situation that leads to a person saying like, well, why even bother, right? Like, I spent all day on this, they're not going to use my work. That's the undervalue side of it. Whereas for me, when that used to happen to me, I'd be like, oh, I had an entire day to work on something and learn a new skill or blah, 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 right? Like, do something. And bonus, it has absolutely zero production impact, so it's never going to come back to bite me in the butt.
It did not break production. It could not break production because it's never going into production. So
exactly.
So you've had, Chad, you've had opportunities to feel undervalued. That stuff happened where you could take it as you're being undervalued, but you took it a different way.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about your headspace, right? Like, if, like, I don't let yourself, I didn't let myself go there, right? It was, saying undervalued and unappreciated and all of that stuff is just putting yourself in this negative headspace. You could also say, goodness gracious, I've had such an opportunity to learn, grow, blah, blah, blah. And it's, if it's used, if it's not used, I still got paid. I'm still,
I will say that headspace probably plays an important role in the whole feeling of undervalued. Like if you are in one area that I kind of think of when I think of sort of undervalued is that throughout your career, before you get promoted or whatever, you are going to be doing more work than your title, right? So if you're a junior engineer and you're doing regular engineer work, you're going to feel like, hey, I'm doing the work, I should be promoted. And it almost, I mean, obviously there are special cases where you do get promoted before you're doing the really hard work, but it's pretty rare. It's mostly do the work, get the promotion is the traditional sort of path, right? So you're going to be doing harder work than you started in your position, and then you'll be recognized for it. But before you're recognized, you're going to feel a little undervalued maybe at times. Like if it's not on the scale that you wanted, like, oh, I didn't get promoted for 1 month longer than I thought, or 6 months, or a year, or whatever, you know.
I think too, like maybe misinterpreting reality. You know,
That's
you look,
a good one too.
you're working your butt off. You're working 50 hours a week. You go on a Saturday, and then you see the people that come in at 9, take a lunch, leave at 4 to pick up their kids. They're not there Saturdays, and you're like, and then there's this equal recognition, and you're like, well, wait, I'm doing all this extra stuff, and then you can feel undervalued. I think comparing yourself to others never works out.
No.
That's the thing that gets me about this is like looking at your neighbor's driveway and seeing that, oh, we're doing the same job. He's got a nicer car. That's, who cares, right? Like,
Yeah,
somebody else is getting ahead. Somebody else is doing slightly whatever. I don't care, right? Like, it's not my business. Good
this
luck.
is not a race.
Instead of getting mad about it, I'm happy for the guy, right? And
Right.
if somebody's, if I don't know, I don't get it. Especially for people with we've all got pretty nice gigs, we've got nice jobs, and the undervalued and the negative emotions and the negative opinions and all of this stuff that feed into day to day. I'm like, all right, I mean, you got to put yourself in that spot, right? Like, and if you stay in that spot, it's probably all of this negativity just feeding in on itself in your own head, and it doesn't reflect other people's reality, right? Like, that's just your world, right? We're all living,
Elle, have you ever had someone say to you, whatever you're making, it's not enough?
That exact phrase, no.
That's, to me, that's one of the worst things that somebody can say to you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
if you believe it.
Yeah, I don't trust any environment where it's you need to, the amount of effort is not worth the reward. Like, if you're in it for the recognition, then okay, if you want to work 7 days a week, all the more power to you. But I think, going back to Chad, what you're saying, I feel like, Chad, what you're getting at is why are you at your job? What is it that gives you satisfaction? And if your self-esteem and your satisfaction is driven entirely on other people recognizing your work, you're probably going to be in a much less stable place over time. And that can lead you to feel like I'm being undervalued because people aren't telling me I'm doing a good job all the time. Or when I don't understand why, from a company's perspective, it might be good to thank and recognize the whole team as opposed to the one person who worked their butt off for weeks on end. So I completely agree that a lot of it is very much perspective. the expectation that, well, my boss needs to see that I'm doing all this work because they're in a meeting, one meeting with me a day. Like, well, they've got 40 other things to do, and they might have stuff, even outside of work that's going through their head, and they can be just as preoccupied as you can be. So I think it's a balance between keep being very honest with yourself about how do I decide if I'm being undervalued or not? Where am I getting my satisfaction and confidence from? And if it's from others, you need to recognize that, because that's going to take you on a bumpy road. And also advocate for yourself. So Kyle, whatever you're doing, it's not enough. Okay, let's have that conversation. Here are the things that I'm doing that I feel like is enough. That's not meeting your understanding. Is there a middle ground? Or can I convince you that no, I'm actually am doing enough, and if you don't think I am, that's your bad perception. Or like,
Right.
you need
Well,
to make
I was
explicit what you're doing.
yeah, I was saying, when someone says whatever you're making, it's not enough, meaning somebody else is telling you you're undervalued.
Oh,
Like, they're not paying you, you're so good, they're not paying you enough, or whatever you're making, it's not enough. They believe they're complimenting you. And
yes.
really what that message is sending is you're being undervalued, you're being underpaid, if you
According
believe
to
it.
and
Yeah.
according to their evaluation, because some people
Yeah.
absolutely, like, you think about like med school graduate, like interns, first year doctors. Yeah, they're underpaid. Yeah. Of course
Yeah.
they are. But that the exchange is that they are brand new to this field, and the value of the training and the learning and the mentorship you're getting there offsets the being underpaid. So it is all about, like,
Yeah.
how are you, what compensation do you have? What opportunities do you have? That total set of benefits is the value.
Yeah.
It's not just salary.
And I think that, when you're just kind of embarking on your career and your resume doesn't have a lot of experience on it, um, you have to work your way to that level of pay that you really want, and to that level of experience you need to demand that. If it's salary you're thinking of, if it's status, if it's recognition, it's a path of work. Um, and what I always think about um, is in terms of pay. It's like, well, you signed up for whatever. Like, when you started your job, you signed up for it, and they told you what you were going to make, and you're okay with it, and that's where you started. And then it's individuals' journey through their career to move that up and negotiate, and sometimes it means changing jobs, things like that. But the undervalued in terms of recognition, perception, status, promotions, things like that. Um, I think a lot of that's self-inflicted, like Chad was talking about, taking that on, expectations of other people. Um, you don't necessarily have all the information. Um, someone else is doing a job. You don't understand necessarily what it takes to do that job, how good they are at their job, what their output is, what the value is. There's a lot of factors that go into it. So, it's, you want things to be fair, but
Always.
if you want things to be like always incredibly awesome and lavish praise, and like, if you have this idea in your head that it should be this red carpet experience, you're setting yourself up for disappointment.
Well, yeah, I think we can start to think that recognition, advancement, whatever, that's going to happen automatically. And sometimes it can, but a lot of it is it requires you to advocate. It requires you to, at the interview, be prepared. If you want to have X salary, for example, you need to try to negotiate for that. Because the chances of you doing an interview, giving them your salary range, and they come back and say, no, we're going to give you this much more because you were such a good interviewer. Like, no, that's not going to happen.
I think there's two things that people don't do that they should. One is raise your hand.
Yes.
If you're interested in something, don't expect people to read your mind.
Yeah.
And or think that you're like the right person for something or interested in doing something, or even have a skill set where you could do something. Raise your hand. If there's something you want, you need to ask for it. And figuring out what you want that's going to give you job satisfaction, and then asking for it, asking what it takes to get there, kind of figuring that out is helpful.
And I will say, and then I'll shut up because I know I've been chatting away, is that if you're able to raise your hand, say what you want, this is what I want to go for, and it turns out the company that you're currently at can't give you what you're looking for, it honestly can make resignation and finding someplace new a lot easier, because then your current employer has a better frame of reference. Like, okay, they wanted to go down this path. We're not willing to do it. It's not like this is out of the blue. So you help maintain that bridge even with people moving forward.
Right. And wow, did that train of thought just leave my head?
Kyle, what's your last name again?
People have to be aware of things. So if you're kind of off in a corner,
you can't sit in the corner and expect to be recognized.
Doing awesome stuff that no one knows about, then they don't know what to recognize. Status reports, conversations. I think, not being afraid to toot your own horn a little bit and say, I'm in a great mood because I just did this awesome thing. Standing up and cheering in the corner because you figured something out, doing the running man for 5 minutes like Ted Lasso. But again, it's like, are the people that, you're expecting to recognize you and value you, do they have visibility? And the other thing is, like, what else is on their plate?
Yep.
If you've got 100 people under you, you can't give anybody like that much focus. Like you're basically dealing with issues and playing whack-a-mole. Sometimes it's like you don't have time to really think, and I think it's easy to forget to do that thing you need to do to provide recognition and make somebody feel valued. But what if you actually are being undervalued?
Peter, what do you do?
Well, I think you have to take your advice, Al, and say, these are the things that I want to do in the future. Can you help me get there? And if not, say, well, we are on a divergent path, and I'm going to go find the things that I'm looking for. It's never fun to leave a company. I've tried to do it as few times as possible. But it happens, right? Sometimes and there are times where you're just in the wrong headspace.
Yeah.
Like, nothing you can do for me right now will make me happy. I'm so mad, and it feels a little bit like a toddler, but you can spin yourself way into the wrong place, and the only way to change that is to change your surroundings
or take PTO.
Yeah.
Take PTO. Yeah.
Well, I think that's an important point. Burnout, other stuff might be going on that puts you in a bad headspace.
Right.
That makes it more likely that you're going to feel, you're going to take things the wrong way and be undervalued. One thing I see happening with companies is they'll hire somebody into a position, and over time that position will grow and change, and that person will go from, like, let's say they're like a level 1 help support tech person, and then 2 years later they're maintaining all the servers, they're administrating everything, they're testing, they're doing all sorts of stuff that's more of a systems engineer, systems admin role, things like that. So they've grown into that asset, into that role that demands, higher salary and, in the market. And then they're still making their, help desk money. And then they're like, well, I'm doing all this stuff. Like, maybe there's a person that left and they took over that role, and that person was a higher paid, and maybe it's perception, but maybe it's actually that the market demands more of that role and you're doing a good job at it. It's fair to get paid, market value or near it, at least. There's a fairness there. But they just don't. And eventually they lose that person. And then they hire somebody and pay them that market value salary. Or they hire 2 people to fill that role because it takes 2 people to do what that person did. Who knows? But it seems like losing somebody happens. I've seen it happen a number of times.
It can be an eye opener for both sides, right?
Yeah. Like,
is it
they
though?
had
Because
to leave to feel it. Yeah.
aren't we kind of seeing that in society today? People are valuing their time more than they're valuing a second shift at McDonald's, or all these places that are having shortages of workers. I think there's a lot of folks out there right now saying specifically, you know what, my time's worth more than this. I don't need to do this job for whatever. There is a market price where that comes up, and hopefully we get there. But that's people are literally doing that right now. Like,
I just spent a year and a half of not spending an hour in the car every day, or an hour and a half. Am I just going to jump back into that situation? Or now it's like I'm used to that. I'm used to having that time and less frustration, and things change.
there is the other side of this too. So there's the fellow that feels undervalued, and then there's the environment around them that is either truth, or either rightfully or unrightfully undervaluing that guy, right? So in situations, and we've probably all been in these, like, you could be on the other side of that where you're like, yeah, I'm undervaluing has such negative connotations. I don't want to always use that word, but like, you assign people a little bit less based on what you got out of them previously. And that, that back and forth eventually leads to, oh, I'm not, that guy feels undervalued, and then an awkward conversation. Well, yeah, man, like, I get what you're saying. Here's how we got there, right?
Right.
Like, it's one of these things where, like, everybody gets to, we're moving towards this thing where, like, everybody's opinions have value, and everybody's opinions and ideas should be heard and voiced and blah, blah, blah. And that's kind of that's the ideal, but in practice, sometimes that's horrible, right? Like, to be able to, like, if I had this at a tiny company before coming here, right? My own thing. I was like, all right, everybody threw out their opinions, and we didn't implement a lot of them a lot of the time. And yeah, it gets it gets awkward. I mean, having to tell somebody that's just a bad idea. Like, you don't say it just like that, but you massage it in a way like, yeah, here's why that, like, it's a great thought. I'm glad I'm glad those neurons fired in that specific way. However, it's horrible for these reasons.
Right.
I'm not necessarily the best at delivering that, right? And
I
this
think
is
it
one of the reasons I
takes
was excited about having this one, because I'm really kind of just listening, because I
it
don't know how
takes
to deal.
I think it takes maturity to not take it personally when your ideas are shot down. I've had so many awesome ideas the day of the idea that the next day were not so great, and the day after that sucked. And I was like, yeah, I wasn't really thinking things through.
Right.
I wasn't. Yeah, I had an epiphany at the moment. I said, oh, we should do this. And then there's like 50 reasons why, no, that's not going to work that you didn't think of in the moment. So I think time
really helps.
time
Time
and
helps a lot of
thought.
that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think there's also there's a amazing show, Star Trek animated show called Lower Decks that everyone should watch. But there's a part of an episode of that I rewatched recently that I love, where they talk about how diplomacy is working when both sides are unhappy.
Yeah.
That success is, you can have a conversation where everyone's throwing in their opinions, and you'll eventually, hopefully, come to a decision, but that decision isn't necessarily one single person's idea being fully accepted. Like, a lot of times there's going to be a compromise, and that does not mean that you lose. That means that you're doing the best thing for as many people involved in this as possible.
It also means, compromise doesn't mean everybody wins.
Yeah.
It means nobody loses.
Yep.
I just want to say to your point, Chad, where you talk about perhaps, undervaluing someone, or getting to that point where, you're not assigning them the glorious work that they feel like they deserve. I'm sure that there are some steps that you'd be willing to lay out for that person and say, oh, you feel like you need to do more. Okay, well, let's start with this, and maybe we can work up to that again. But we've been noticing that you've had to come in on weekends and stay late every single night to get your small work done, and so who comes in at 9 and leaves at 4 is getting the same amount of work done. And so we're going to assign some of that stuff to them because they've got more bandwidth than you seem to have to get your stuff done. And it's the other side of the coin that, not everybody that's in there on weekends looking around by themselves thinks about, right?
Yeah.
Like, why am I here? Oh, well, because I have to be to get my stuff done. But am I doing that? Am I doing vanity overtime? That's sort of a thing too, that sometimes, like, I'm the first in the office and the last to leave, and I goof around for 4 hours in between, but by golly, I'm here the longest of everybody.
I've had many days where it was a 10-hour day because of 2 hours of goofing around. And I'm okay with that. It's like I had a fun day. Not always, but that's a good point. Like, if you work all those hours and weekends, what's the perception going to be? Oh, you're a champion, or oh, you can't get your work done.
One of the things that I notice is there are folks, since I've started working, there's been folks that have always been like, there's folks that just quietly do the job, right? And if they're in on weekends, you'll notice, okay, this person is in on a weekend, right? And then there's the other folks that are like, hey guys, I'm they'll make sure to send out an email or a Slack message or a team message to make sure, gosh darn it, everybody knows I'm here on Saturday, and then, okay, I'm done. That's a long weekend. Or the folks that on Friday at 2:00 are like, oh, I've already worked 50 hours. I'm like, that for some reason, I can see how those folks might want to get the message out there, but like good leaders, like people that pay attention. I mean, that part of, if you feel undervalued, uh, move, but also find a good leader, find a good project or a good thing for you to be on where they actually see without you having to say specifically, oh yeah, I worked 50 hours or 60 hours or blah, blah, blah. People are going to notice eventually.
Being a great promoter of yourself is not the best skill. It's an okay skill to have, and you should be, not hiding your skills, but at the same time, yeah, you shouldn't have to come in with a megaphone and a backing track and
exactly.
somebody throwing glitter around saying,
I disagree.
"Oh, he's here."
I disagree. I think you should like carry a sign, wear a sash.
Everybody's mail glitter to Kyle.
Yeah,
That's what I heard.
I love pats on the back and recognition and all that stuff. But I'm less. I need less of it than I used to. Growing over time. But I always wanted the spotlight and things like that. It's like, well, you get in a service role, and it's like, well, I just want to make everybody's life better, their working life. I just want to, help people, and that, you get appreciation that way. You get appreciation knowing somebody is no longer suffering. But I still like, if I do something, I'm waiting for the recognition. If I don't get it, I'm like, it's no big deal. I know I did a good job. But
I think one of the things ago,
no.
One of the things that really helps is, and this is what's great, not to toot our own horn too much, but for a company to give employees and everybody on a team, leadership, regular employee, everybody, the opportunity to publicly acknowledge folks and appreciate them. And like we've got SDG has entire frameworks built around recognition and acknowledging, whatever, and being everybody's cheerleader. We can give people, high five awards, which actually turn into real money, or restaurants or whatever, whatever. But like, that's that's a thing that I try to do on my teams. We have regular happy hours where we don't talk about work at all, if I can help it. We talk about each other, and that is, as far as value goes, like that feels better to me when somebody asks me about me and not necessarily, oh, where are you on this? Or where, why did this take you this long? Or, whatever. I feel more valuable when people actually care enough to want to know about me, actual me, not work me.
I think focusing on other people is like hugely important. If you lift other people up, you'll go along with them. You don't need to worry about yourself. My grandma always said, if you want to get letters, you need to write some.
Is that what she'd say when you asked for a letter?
Yeah. She wrote a lot of letters.
That's so mean.
Yeah, but it's true. You got to put it out there. You have to, because people, they know that that's a thing. Like, oh, they sent me a letter that was really nice. I'm going to write them back.
Do we need to mention for the younger audience what a letter is or anything like that?
Oh my gosh.
There are 26 of them that start with A, they end with Z.
They would make shapes and markings on a flat surface called paper. And no, I think, that's the thing. It's like if you want to connect to people, you need to reach out. You can't just wait for them to come to your door.
Right.
If you want something to happen, make it happen.
Yeah, and I'll also say I've been on teams where I know one or more people on the team feel undervalued or underrecognized. And it is really helpful if other people can recognize them, just to start to, it builds a sense of team. And also, if I'm feeling undervalued and all of a sudden I get some kind of recognition from someone else on the team, that's starting to build my own confidence. That's starting to give me more of a sense of, okay, I can take this information to my boss at my annual review to say, here are reasons why I should be promoted, or, get different benefits or whatever. So that I found, if I can help other people on my team and just kind of give like peer recognition, that can be really helpful, and
Yeah.
kind of kicking them in the butt to like, come on, advocate for yourself. Do it.
It's much better than sitting around and complaining about everything, right?
Yes.
Which can just, oh man, it is such a sticky environment where, oh, we're complaining about something. Hey, I'll jump in and complain about something too. And oh, now we're all
dug a hole
complaining.
so deep that we don't know how to get out.
Oh, so
I'll tell
horrible.
you this, some of them, and I just want to preface this with, I am not sucking up to anybody.
Liar.
That is not what I do.
Liar.
Do you want
Such
to
a
give us a
Kyle
list
thing.
of
I say
names,
things.
Kyle? Or?
I get myself in trouble. The most unrecognized people is like, the higher you go up the ladder in leadership positions, management positions, things like that, the less you get, the less of that recognition, the less, no one, you're as a minion, you're expecting it from those people. Those pats on the back and being valued and things like that. The higher you get, the more thankless the job is. So don't be afraid to, like, if somebody does something really great for you, to like recognize them, even if they're, higher up the ladder. But no, I'm not going to do that.
Chad says no.
I'm not going to do that for like 6 months.
I will say that
it'll just be seen as sucking up. It'll be divisive.
Being in an attitude of thanks rather than an attitude of want is much better.
Yes.
So if you do something nice to me, thank you. If you help me, if you whatever, it does not hurt to go out of your way to say thank you. Right? It really is not a painful process to just say, "Oh, thanks for the help. I appreciated that one thing."
And I have to fight that. Like I've been fighting that for years, like, to get to that point where it's not want and need and self-serving. I try to be a narcissist that uses his powers for good, I guess is what I'm saying.
All right. We're going to have to mute Kyle's mic here to let Chad talk.
I'm sorry, Chad.
Go
ahead.
Chad.
Lay it on. Let's have it.
What was I going to say? I don't know.
Too late now.
Cool.
It was going to be incredible.
No, it was great. Actually, so one of the things that I've recognized, I mean, especially not just here, at STG consulting with with our clients, previously having my own thing, and then previously being a part of other things, like just including people up. The org chart has always been fascinating to me. Like people treat it as this structural thing where, like, oh, you don't talk to this guy's boss and this guy's blah blah blah. Invite these people out to happy hour. We did this, when I hung out with folks at every gig, everybody's invited, right? And just those people up there feeling included in things, and not like secluded as part, nobody's going to invite the director of whatever out. Like, why not, right? Invite those people, include them. That's always been pretty like, I've done that forever and it works, right? And that works here too.
Sometimes they show up.
Oftentimes they show up.
Yeah.
Like a surprising amount of times they show up, whether it's, within our own organization, with, or our clients or anybody. Invite, all of them. That's the recognition that I appreciate. And when I'm in those types of roles, that's what I like. I don't want to be nodding, like everybody's having fun and I'm, whatever. I don't know if that's a realistic or it seems almost like a caricature of what, people treat the org chart as. But in some cases, I've seen it really be a thing where like, oh yeah, those people don't get invited. Hell, why? Bring them to the happy hour, breakfast, whatever. It works, and it's better for everybody when you have relationships with your coworkers.
And you treat them as people, right? You don't treat them
Yes,
as
absolutely.
positions or something like that. They're just regular people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems so weird to have to say that out loud, like so often, right? Like that's always been weird to me, is that like different folks in different roles get different treatment, kind of, but like
Oh, not kind of. Yeah, they do.
Not from me. I don't know. It's been weird for me to like readjust back to that, from coming, going from small company to, working for larger companies, and then back again, and bouncing back and forth between company sizes, and seeing how organization structures are handled differently in different places for no good reason, right? Like there's really not I mean, from what I've seen so far in Minnesota IT in our community, it's kind of weird, and it doesn't need to be that way.
Yeah. When I first joined like the working world, the corporate world, it was doing desktop support for a company and at the corporate office. So I was helping everybody. So when I walked into the CEO's office, um, he would get up and give me his chair so that I could work on his computer. I was the only person in the company that he would give his chair to. And then I'd sit down and he'd sit across from me, and I'd say, well, I guess you're wondering why I called you in here today. You're just not working out.
Right.
Or something like that.
You need to make some changes.
I was a wise guy, and I didn't know any better than just to, give him a hard time. Like, okay, my machine won't turn on. Okay, monitor power button, computer power button. And they just laugh and shake their head, but they appreciated it. They liked it, that I was like not nervous around them, not afraid.
Treating them like a human rather than some sort of demigod.
Yeah. You got to get to know people though first. You got to initially you can't just go in without.
You can't start firing the CEO your first time in
hot.
helping him with the computer, right?
Right. You have to build that relationship up a bit and show the respect, and exactly. Yeah, I think the pyramid of power, the hierarchy, is, people see it as this big, pyramid, and it's like, no, flip that over, and it's a pyramid of support and responsibility. So at the very top is actually supporting the entire thing and responsible for the entire thing. And then as you go, it's the weight is less on each person, the responsibility is less on each person. But it's some place that I don't want to be. I don't want to be that peak of that pyramid. I don't want to be I want to be like 3 or 4 or 5 layers down, where I'm happy, stress free.
Chad, to your point about sort of the walled garden or whatever you want to call it, where the CEO is separate from the peons or whatever, in the past, sometimes that was more explicit, right? Like there was a floor that you couldn't go to unless you were special and things like that. And now I think some of those norms have dropped off quite a bit over time. But
I mean, for me, that really became a thing for me when I worked. So Target, there was a CIO, and the dude literally walked around and just chatted with, regular folks all the time. He was a huge advocate for adoption, so he knew we were adopting. So he asked me about that. Even followed up a couple of like that type of person should exist more in the world, right? Where Go ahead, Elle. I'm sorry.
I was just agreeing with you. Keep going.
Okay, I like that. I just think that kind of person should exist more, and it shouldn't have to originate up there, right? Like, it's weird that it does. And I will say again though, like the entire episode is about people feeling undervalued and underappreciated, and just like the tiniest little detail that dude remembered made me feel like, oh, that actually, like, it matters a lot to especially younger, and probably wouldn't matter as much today, but like especially starting out, like your first decade in the field, it does kind of, it feels different, right?
I honestly think that any leader that can keep track of small details and care about a person is a lot stronger than somebody that keeps their door closed and hides from people for the entire day, right?
I'm gonna
calling you by name, like this is a 500-person company.
Well, I had a tag on, so like I had a badge. Actually, it's funny. So that you say that, Peter. I have my notebook for my current project, and I keep track of like little notes about people in here. And one of them says, I can't. It says a name, and then it has his favorite beer, Stroh's, because I knew I would forget that.
But honestly, you wrote it down not because you are, not caring or anything like that.
It's part of an evil
You wrote
plan.
it down because your memory's going, right? Like in the old days, you just remembered that they like Stroh's, and now you're like, oh, I got to remember that so and so likes Stroh's because Stroh's and Grainbelt have
Yeah.
You know what, Peter?
What people don't know about Chad is Chad is a perpetual day brightener.
What?
Yes.
He is a day brightener. Yes. He is going to brighten the day of the people around him with little gestures and moments and stuff like that. And I think that's fantastic.
Oh, this page has everybody and their spouse's name on it. All right.
I just valued you, Chad.
Yes. I felt it. Yeah.
But it's important to remember those things. And sometimes we forget and need to be reminded. And it's easier to look in a book than it is to embarrass yourself by asking someone. So I know we've worked together for 5 years and I've met your wife 12 times, but I totally can't remember their name.
Yeah.
Because it was at a party or whatever, and it just didn't stick for whatever reason. So
also, I need a new SDG notebook. Mine is literally, because my memory's really, really bad. So
I'll see what I can do.
It's falling apart. Thanks, Kyle. I would appreciate it. It would make me feel valued.
I'm not the office
analog
guy,
tech support.
maybe I could pass the word along. Yeah. Excellent. Well, that was the SDG podcast. If you want to get a hold of us, drop us an email at thepodcasters@solutiondesign.com. Until next time, say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.
See ya.
Goodbye. Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.